as someone who's wants to be, the solopreneur going into a somehow scalable full-time income, I'm kind of a representative or avatar of so many people out there, especially in my audience. What is the one thing at the moment that we are maybe not talking about that we should be when it comes to how to be a creative entrepreneur and be entrepreneurial with our passion and what we want to do with that craft going into, I guess, 2026 and beyond?
Okay. Many ways to unpack this, Matt. The first thing is a lot of people think they're entrepreneurs or solopreneurs when they're actually just freelancers and they haven't figured out how to run a business. And the telltale sign is when I ask people how much money you're making, they'll tell me a number. And I say, well, if we had to pay somebody to do your work for you, how much money would be left over so that you actually don't touch anything? You're not allowed to touch anything. You're allowed just to manage. And when we put it that way, then most of them are negative revenue or negative profit, I should say. They don't understand that what they're really doing is not building a business, but just charging some kind of project day rate in which there are no guarantees for future work. There's no guaranteed income. There's nothing like that. That's a surprisingly common mistake that a lot of quote unquote entrepreneurs are making, or solopreneurs. They haven't even entered into entrepreneurship.
Where do we start? If we're thinking, my biggest concern for many, I bring it back to myself, but I'm a great example of many out there as probably one of those types of people, and very, very concerned about pushing too much because I'm worried that it's going to desensitize, or I'm going to lose that passion for what I want to do. And so there's this kind of no man's land between, getting a little bit of income and being kind of that freelance persona, and then scaling into something that is scalable and sustainable, but without losing, really why we do this in the first place. Where do we even start with this?
All right, let's clarify then. I think what I understand you saying is, if I just hire people to do the work, then what am I doing? Am I just a corporate paper pusher? Is that what I do? I'm a telephone artist where I just telephone people and tell them what to do. Okay, so let's just assume then that you want to do the work yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you were to bid the projects as if someone else were working on it and leave room left over for profit, then you've entered into at least entrepreneurship. So let's just say to hire a comparable photographer to do what you do, to put them on salary, it would cost about $120K. Let's just say that for round numbers, okay? It could be more or less. It doesn't really matter. Just use this number as an illustration. And then there's probably a project manager of some sort. Some of us have reps. They do that for us, but you need some kind of project manager to do the bidding, to do the contracts, to book different people. So that person has to be accounted for. Let's say this person is $65K on an annual basis. We need to look at everything on an annual basis, because every time I ask people how much it costs, they start quoting me hourly or day rates. That's how I know they're not thinking of it as an entrepreneurship thing, okay? Now, if you had to pay these people this amount of money, in most places to cover their taxes and insurance and some liability stuff, you probably have to add another 20% on top of that. Okay, so that is just your base labor costs. We're not accounting for overhead, for software, for purchasing of equipment, things like that. When you start adding all that stuff up, it starts to look like a really big number. And then when you have all that number totaled up, that's just your break-even number. You need to add in profit to that. So you're going to add in 20 to 25%. Cool. Now you have understanding how to build a business. Here's the cool part. You can still choose to do the work. And here's the best part, which is you just choose to do the projects that you feel most passionate about. Maybe you don't want to do retouching. Maybe you don't want to scout locations. Maybe you don't want to do test shoots. That's what an assistant photographer or an assistant is able to do for you. Or, it's the 10th dog food commercial or photo shoot, and you don't really want to do it anymore. You've done the 9. You don't need to do the 10th one. The tone, the style, all that's been set up. And you want to get yourself to that point in which you're doing the high level creative stuff. Now, I've been fortunate to work on campaigns. And I remember one time when we flew to China, we were working with one of the biggest fashion photographers in China. And she had 3 sets going on at the same time, all the time. 3 simultaneous projects going on. And you know what she did? She walked in after somebody had done all the lighting setup. She made some notes. They fixed it. And she came in, they handed her the camera. She pushed the button a couple of times, and then she walked on to the next set. And the whole machine has been built around this. So you could say, like, what is the most essential thing that you have to do and that gives you joy that no one else can do? Everything else you can delegate to someone else. So I'm not saying that you have to be removed from the business. You can just choose which parts you enjoy the most.